The concept of presenting an instrument that could serve as a vehicle for exploration for non-musicians in an easy way is a very valuable aspect of Pyradym, because you can throw away the performance aspect of a musical instrument. You can throw away the aspect of, playing things wrong. The only thing you need to know about playing Pyradym correctly is one thing. You just continually ask yourself, how does this sound feel? An instrument is something that you can express with. If you think about it, a piano is a machine. There's fulcrums in there, and there's all sorts of articulated mechanics. There's strings. It's very much of a machine, but it's the way that the individual approaches it that makes it an instrument. So what makes it an instrument is you can play Bach or Boogie Woogie on the same piano, and it's all subject to the interpretation and the intention of the operator, of the musician. So Pyradym in the same context is going to be able to follow the intention of whatever the practitioner or user wishes for it to be. It's got so many different modalities associated with it, and some people do define it depending on what they identify most with. Some people identify with the light component of it, and it's like, oh, it's a light therapy instrument. And then some people think about the sound of it, and then some people think about the physio-acoustic aspect of it, the vibratory aspect of it. Some people just call it the pyramid because they identify with the geometry of it. This is a product that doesn't have an industry. There's no competition because no one's quite sure what any of this is supposed to be, including me. I was told by my design team that this is so far ahead of the curve that you're going to have to wait for the curve to catch up, and I think the curve is finally catching up. What's involved with maintaining one's health is much more beyond just not being sick. The model of allopathic medicine is they more or less have the stance that you are going to get sick. It's just a matter of time, and when that happens, we have this drug that has been designed to address that. Well, that's not really health care, that's more sick care. And I think one of the shifts in consciousness that's now occurring is people that are interested in getting more out of their life. And there's a lot more natural ways that can be done. I think one of the things that we've learned from the recent pandemic situation is that health care isn't just necessarily not being sick. There's a mental and emotional aspect associated with being healthy. As I like to say, Pyradym is an ideal instrument for people that want to meditate, that can't meditate. It has a very profound range of what it can be utilized for. One of the main components of the Pyradym instrument is this is the power supply board. This is a linear power supply design. One of the interesting things about this power supply design is that there's actually the employment of Reiki symbology, which is used on every circuit board that goes into Pyradym. And there's also some Egyptian biogeometry that's embedded right into the copper of the board. Egyptian biogeometry is an extension of an ancient technology that was pioneered more recently in 19th century France, and it's known as radioesthesia. This is a partially populated main board. So we're basically focusing and collecting the etheric energy at this location on this circuit board and putting it in this little Reiki symbol that means put the power here. And so we're sort of coalescing that energy and moving it back up out of the instrument and then amplifying it with this big lovely quartz crystal that's on the top. Not only does this amplify the radioesthesia energy and what is known as radionics, putting it back out into the space, but it's also a very, very effective mixer of the colors that are generated by the light engine of Pyradym. And just to reiterate, this is an analog sound generation technology, and it's basically what was my bread and butter working at Moog Music. It's a different technology than digital signal generation. It's more of a organic sound. It feels better. And as I like to say, digital sound sounds better, but analog sound feels better. The reminiscent aspect of Pyradym that people report, I think it's because it really does have a lot of the same tonal characteristics of the human voice, but it has such a simplistic tone. It almost sounds like a pipe organ in a certain way. It kind of has that just a very robust, very thick, very rich, rolling sort of tone to it. It sounds very satisfying. And I think that there's a physiological remembrance of it that we've carried forward from other encounters with this sort of technology. This is not the first time that this technology has visited our planet. I think that's what people are remembering. One morning I just woke up and I felt I needed to write. So I got up and went down into my office and said, okay, I've got a pencil, I've got something to write on. What am I writing? And I heard the formation of a word. So, I guess I'm supposed to write that down. So I wrote the word down. And then another word. It was just a stream of consciousness, and I wouldn't remember the word before the word they gave me. So in other words, they give me a word and I would have no recollection of what the word before it was. So I was just writing this. It was like a serial writing exercise where it was just word, 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 period, word, word, word. And, and I would write for 15 minutes every morning, and then they would just stop. It was like throwing a light switch where the words just stopped coming. And that's when it was like some really profound stuff, and it was all related to the design of Pyradym, not necessarily so much the technical things, but just the form and function, if you will. This is what this is intended to do. This is how it operated in the past, and so you're going to keep that in mind, but also because of the requirements of what's going on on the earth at this point in time, it's going to have this other thing. It was a group of 9 higher order energies that were overseeing this download of information on how to move through this design process. And we think that you should look into this and read this, and there's a book on pyramid power that you might be interested in. And because I already had the knowledge as an electrical engineer about the hardware, how to design circuits and synthesizers and all the rest of that, and how to build power supplies and power amplifiers, because I've been doing that stuff professionally for a lot of years. So now it was going to be, okay, well, we're going to do what you already know how to do very well, but the intention is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to get more focused on the energetic aspects of how to design a power supply to be a cleaner, more energetically pure technology. How the sound is going to be, a little bit different than what you're used to doing, and because the goal is to create pure sound rather than to make music. Or here, the purpose is a little bit different. We're trying to resonate people, so we want it to be a little bit different than what you're used to. So there's a few techniques that were sort of suggested to me. There was a group of 9, only 2 of them had incarnated before. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Who were the 2 that are incarnated? And they named Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla as the 2 who had incarnated before, that were kind of like the directors of the design team. One of the questions that was always asked was, okay, so if people are buying these, who's buying them? Is it individuals for their own personal practice, or is it professionals that wish to use it in their therapeutic business and things of that nature? And the answer was always yes, because there was both factions that were interested in working with, for lack of a better term, sound therapy, even though Pyradym is much more articulate than that. But I think the response to that is shown in the groundswell of the number of orders that we've seen over the last couple of years, particularly since the pandemic came along. But more and more people are becoming concerned with their emotional health and meditative practice. And people are starting to look around as to what they can readily access. Pyradym allows you to explore a greater frequency spectrum. You know, I think people, they find it when they're supposed to find it, and they usually find it in the most unusual ways. They tend to stumble across it. Over half of the clients that are in the build queue at the moment, as far as I know, have never actually experienced the instrument personally before. But when you look at the videos that are there, I think that there's such a reminiscent quality to the sound that Pyradym makes, even coming through the small speakers on someone's computer. It does sort of elicit that level of emotion, and there's a connection to it, there's an attachment to it. And a lot of people have actually met it and seen it before they actually saw it. So whether it was in dream time or past life, I can't venture a guess, but yeah, there's just something about it. I think reminiscent is a big component of the attraction of Pyradym. Music is sound, but sound is not necessarily music. It's the way that it's organized. So there's the content, but there's also the intent with what you're using to organize sound in order to create a specific feeling. People have been toning for centuries in the concept of using the essence of all music and distilling it down into something that we call physio-acoustics, which is the vibrational component of the music, is something that we're really just sort of starting to explore. So it's sort of a new interpretation of a very ancient practice. There is a tremendous amount of value to be found in exploring sound in a non-musical context, so that you can sort of remove all of the compositional elements of it and get right down to the resonant component of creating the sound, and working with that in a form that is not necessarily as much of a listening experience, but more of a emotional, participatory, vibrational experience.